The appointed place and the appointed time is here and now. Where are you going? Don't run from fate.
You might be saying to yourself, I've never heard of this show before. Wait, is that footage in 4:3? That means this is old, isn't it? Yes, by some standards, it is a little older than others, but that does not mean that it is any less enjoyable. Hopefully. Comic Party is a series that I haven't rewatched in quite a few years, and even when I watched it the first time, I don't think I got as much out of it as I did recently. It's a series that, for me, I found enjoyable not just for the hilarious antics of the characters and for the story that it was trying to tell, but also for the show's underlying message. As really, the show is about the creative process, and what a harrowing experience that can be at times. I also, just last week, spent a good amount of time at an anime convention, my 12th year at Anime North in Toronto, and as such, I got rather nostalgic for series of old that would help me last through the non-con season months until the next Anime North. And so I picked this up at Nomi no Ichi, the con's version of Garage Sale, for like $15. It was a steal, let me tell you. So, if you'll allow me to indulge myself in a personal favorite series of mine, I would like to take a minute to talk about it. Well, probably a little bit more than a minute. So now, my brothers, my sisters, and my fellow comrades of otakudom. My name is Arcada, and today on Glass Reflection, we're talking about Comic Party. Let's jam. So, for the most part, this series is about doujinshi, or rather the writing and selling of doujinshi. Don't know what doujinshi is? Well, anytime there is a new series out, fans of that show, particularly artistically minded fans, take to their pens and their paper and draw up fan works in the form of parodies, homages, and the like. Sometimes even original work if the artist is so inclined. By and large, though, the doujinshi market was created by fans for fans, mostly for their love and passion for, the more officially produced manga that they adore. This is the world that Comic Party sets out to explore when our main character, Kazuki, after some prodding from his best friend Tyshee, is introduced to the world of doujinshi and selling them at comic markets. It should be noted that if you're watching this series dubbed, that the term doujinshi is swapped out for fan comics. So if you are a little bit confused by that, that's why. Over the course of the series, Kazuki is convinced to produce his own doujinshi and attempt to sell it at a comic market, much to the joy of Tyshee and the frustration of his other friend, Mizuki. In actuality, the series has two main plot threads. One is Kazuki's bumpy journey into the world of doujinshi, and the other is Mizuki's acceptance of the whole fandom. Mizuki's portion of the plot is really the main point where I have some disappointment in the show. She initially hates everything about Kazuki's new obsession and is quite vocal and insistent on her dislike. But there is not much of a progression with her character at all. No slow movement from hate to dislike to tolerance to possibly enjoyment. I suppose I've just been spoiled by a similar plotline from the anime Genshiken involving the character of Kasukabe, which is its version of this character role. Mostly I feel this way because Genshiken didn't try to wrangle in a romance subplot that really wasn't going to go anywhere from the start. Kisuke Story, though, is the main reason why I enjoyed watching the series. At first, the show gives off this air that things will be happy-go-lucky. It sets up a mini rivalry between Kazuki, his new doujinshi friend Yu, and the incredibly popular and talented Emi Oba, who is about as annoying as I made her name sound. So it set up that rivalry, and you would expect that potentially the series would be about him getting really good at writing comics, and that his popularity would start to skyrocket him into stardom. Unfortunately for him, this series has a heavy dose of crushing reality. Popularity is not gained overnight, and sometimes, in the pursuit of such a thing, you end up traveling in the opposite direction from where you were hoping to go. How Kisuke deals with this and how relatable it can be is what I believe to be the appeal of this series. As a character, and quite realistically, he doesn't take rejection well and always ends up setting expectations for himself far higher than he really should. Not that high expectations are generally bad, but you need to be able to handle them. As with anything, if you set high expectations for yourselves and then don't even come close to meeting them, you need to be able to have the courage and the strength to stand back up, brush yourself off, and continue on. Failure is sometimes necessary for success, and that is one of the major lessons that Comic Party is trying to teach us. But it's not just that though. The show seeks to engage you in the world that Kisuke has been engulfed in, to show you not just the low points, but the high points of why this fandom is worth getting into in the first place. And the show does that with one of the greatest versions of the superfan ever, Tyshee.
My comrade, what is this in my hand?
A muffin, right?
You are correct! This is indeed a simple breakfast muffin. But imagine this muffin tasted so good that everyone wanted it, and it was consumed by everyone everywhere, transcending nationality, race, and religion. This muffin could conquer the world!
Tyshee is what I wish I could be. A master fan of doujinshi, he and his supernatural powers of awesomeness make up some of the most amusing scenes ever adapted into the animated medium. His pure, unadulterated love for all of it, and his guiding hand that almost forcefully pushes Kisuke into this world is a sight to behold. Now, it's worth mentioning before we move on that Comic Party is actually an adaptation of a dating sim. Yes, from the makers of the series Two Heart, actually, if you've ever watched that. Which if you haven't, I wouldn't worry about it, it's not all that spectacular. But I bring up To Heart because of its constant reference throughout the show. They bring it up a lot. And not only is To Heart used as an example of what's popular with doujinshi nowadays, but over time, the series likes to take jabs at even its own cliches, which is quite refreshing. And you don't even need to know what To Heart is to be able to enjoy the humor behind it, which is just great. Comic Party has this level of spirit to it that makes up for a lot of the topics that it introduces, but ultimately leaves unexplored during its 13-episode run. What's also quite interesting, though, is the time in which the show originally aired. See, now, here in the mystical future, if you wanted to watch a show about otaku or otaku culture or, any such similar topic, you have quite a few options available to you. You have the aforementioned Genshiken, Welcome to the NHK, Doujin Work, and even Hearts of Lucky Star are some popular examples. However, all of these came after. Comic Party was one of the first in this mini-genre of self-reflective stories on otaku culture, and it was able to set the stage for the shows that came after it, even if it didn't do any of the topics as well as its spiritual descendants. The scope of this series is quite limited by comparison, but as I mentioned, the spirit is still here, and sometimes that's enough. And now we get to some of the harrowing bits. The animation of this series is 15 years old, and it has not aged well. Characters are nicely drawn for the time, but still have the weird hairstyles and designs like they hadn't yet noticed that the 90s were over. It was also from that weird time just after the turn of the century, when most anime studios had switched from using the traditional celluloid animation to the more modern digital animation. And you can tell that the process hasn't been completely refined just yet. It also doesn't help that, as I mentioned, the series was based off a dating game, so they were most likely constrained a bit by the original designs. Ultimately, both the art and the animation were decent for their time, but sadly, their age has caught up with them. And the soundtrack isn't much better, which is odd to say considering that music doesn't really age? Rather, I think it would be more accurate to say that the kind of music that the show utilizes hasn't aged very well. It's like listening to music that came from the 90s, but that music that didn't just quite make it into the top charts. The opening and ending are typical J-pop tracks from the era, but unfortunately nothing overly memorable, which leaves the dub. The English dub is this weird mixture of to holy fuck. On the one hand, you have most of the female cast, ranging from, oh hey, that's Misty from Pokemon, to, oh hey, that's Lisa Ortiz. And finally to, oh hey, that's also Lisa Ortiz, just trying to sound considerably younger. And then you have Sam Riegel in there as Kazuki, doing a very good job at a character who, most of the time, doesn't really know what he wants to do. But whatever it is, he's going to do it with enthusiasm. And finally we have the big kahuna, the reason why I would never again watch Comic Party without a dub, and that is for Liam O'Brien as Tyshee.
I was really looking forward to being able to sell my work at the con, but now...
I understand how you feel.
What is the matter with you people? Don't you hear me laughing mysteriously over here as if I'm hiding some big secret?
What surprises me most about his portrayal of Tyshee is that it is so vastly different from what I usually think of in my mind as the kind of role that Liam is usually cast as. Because, see, usually I see him as the serious main or sub-main character. The Vincent, the Karyamato, the Dr. Tenma, that one police officer from Paranoia Agent who I would only know the name of if I looked it up. But he actually is a rather critical character. So, I don't know who cast Liam as Tyshee, but whoever you are, if you're watching this video, you are a genius because he did it perfectly, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. I think one of the reasons why I keep coming back to this series, even after all of these years, is because it's a good motivator. The struggle that Kazuki has to go through can be taken and applied to almost anything creative. Doujinshi, music, YouTube videos. For someone who has experienced these struggles, what he goes through over the course of this show is entirely relatable. And the fact that he just happens to be doing it with a subject pertinent to us otaku is just a giant bonus that helps the whole thing along. We get excited by his successes, we feel bad with his failures, but at the end of the day, we learn from it and hopefully will not make the same mistakes ourselves. Or, if we do make the same mistakes, we just don't do it as badly as he did. We don't all have our own Tyshee for motivational speeches. Though, if you do, you are oh so lucky. Hang on to him. Or her. It could be a her. What Comic Party also is, well, is a bit of history. It's sort of the grandfather of the self-reflective otaku genre, and if you found yourself enjoying those shows, because I listed a few of them earlier, then, you know, it might be nice, maybe, to see one of the first. Just don't set your expectations too high for it, as I doubt it would meet them. But overall, it's a fairly enjoyable series that I will still show to people who tell me they haven't watched it yet, especially if they have been as into anime as I have. And as such, I present Comic Party with the recommendation to buy it. While availability is limited to almost non-existent at times, it's still a series worth tracking down, if for no other reason than, as I mentioned, to just see the history behind it. Though, perhaps I may just be blinded by my nostalgia for the series. If you're unsure about the series yourself, unfortunately you can't stream it anywhere. Sure, its second season, Comic Party Revolution, is licensed by Funimation, and as such is available for streaming from them. They just don't have this first series, for whatever strange reason. Though personally, I would recommend stopping with the first season, as I never found that second season lived up to it at all. Now, as for its existing license, it's a bit tricky. Previously, it was done by Nozumi Entertainment, however, it is no longer listed in their catalog. It is, however, available from the publisher Eastern Star, so it's not completely out of print. Eastern Star is responsible for quite a few of those older and sometimes more obscure anime licenses still being available. So I am rather glad that they exist and are doing what they are doing, otherwise I would be in the unfortunate position of informing you that the series is out of print entirely, and that would just be sad. For alternate anime recommendations, I'll start you off with Genshiken. I mentioned that series earlier, and honestly, if you haven't watched it yet, it's really the next logical stepping stone into the mini-genre that sort of began here with Comic Party. So check that out. Now, for the second recommendation, I'm half tempted to put Otaku no Video here, because it is an even earlier look into the same sort of thing, because it came out in the early 90s. However, I for one have never really liked Otaku no Video, so instead I am going to recommend Doujin Work. as in many ways that's just Comic Party again, but done differently and in some people's minds, done better. But it was also made like 5 years later, so... Anyway, hopefully between those two, you should find something to your liking. And that's it for me. Please subscribe if you enjoyed the video, follow me on Twitter if you feel so inclined, and hey, if you like what I do here and feel like helping out, please go and check out my Patreon page, and if you feel it within your heart, consider donating. Very special thanks to Halo Millennium, Nikolai Gray, Lulika Adachi, Joshua Garcia, Victor Ekmark, Calhoun Boy, and Grace Anderson for donating already. You guys are all seriously awesome, and I thank you. Until next time, ladies, gentlemen, and others, stay frosty.
Do not underestimate the power of the muffin! The muffin will smite all those who question it! The muffin will crush all naysayers! He who controls the muffin shall control the entire world!